Welcome back to FTBL Culture. It's your boy CultureCams, and today this is a little bit of a different one. I've got my guy in the booth, my first guest of this show. Lyes, how are you, man?
This is like if 40 ever went on the track with Drake. Producer to on the track. Nah, man. It's an honor to be the first guest on FTBL Culture. I love the topic this week. Let's get into it.
Yeah, man. Listen, the topic this week is something that everybody's been talking about on the TL and all over. And it actually stemmed from the horse's mouth himself. And that horse is actually Samuel Eto'o. So Samuel Eto'o this week came out with, some people will say, outrageous comment, but that's what we're here to get into. He basically said Thierry Henry was not on the level of Nicolas Anelka, and also, of course, he was not on the level of himself. So what do you think about Anelka in terms of what he was at? And do you actually think there's some valid points that Eto'o was making in terms of Henry wasn't at the talent level of him?
Talent level is a hard one, right? Because you can look at guys like Balotelli, like maybe he has more talent than like players who are succeeding today, but what they made out of the player's career is what really counts. I remember watching Anelka's documentary recently, and there were people saying that Nikola Anelka at the time was considered the next R9. Like he was next up for being the best striker on the planet. And you talk about him and Henry in the same French camp together. Anelka was at Arsenal before. He was winning the FA Cups and stuff like that. It just didn't end up panning out to be the same career. But when we're talking about strikers and the careers they had, we gotta put this one straight. Anelka is not as good as Thierry Henry was, and he was not as good as Samuel Eto'o was. I think this is a slide dig from Eto'o. I don't know where it stems from.
I don't know where it stems from, because
bro, this is just mad uncalled for.
The thing is, Eto'o's always been kind of he had beef with Ronaldinho as well. He's said stuff like Messi's learnt everything off me. He's had digs at Pep Guardiola.
This is what I think about Eto'o. Eto'o, for me, has a chip on his shoulder. He's always had a chip on his shoulder. Eto'o has always had that chip on his shoulder. I don't know if it comes from being an African footballer and not feeling appreciated. And like he even came out with that claim that Henry playing for France helped his PR a lot more than me playing for Cameroon because he has the papers backing him up all the time.
100% facts, though. 100% facts. I mean, that's an issue where you feel like African players always struggle with, you know. We can go all into what it's like as an African player, but that is something that I definitely agree with. But it did stem from nowhere, and I agree with you. I do think as a natural young talent, and Henry, it's come out of his mouth as well, Anelka was the better natural talent. You know what I mean? He was the better natural talent. What Henry was good at, Henry developed his game to become an unreal player, which we know he was arguably the best striker we've ever seen. However, his athleticism, his speed was what he was. We see what we think about Mbappe now. That's what he was at a point. Then he started refining his game. By a point, Henry was about his speed, his athleticism, and still, even to the end of his time, that was Henry's still best asset. As much as he assisted, as much as he did this, speed and athleticism was where it was. And we saw once his speed and athleticism go, as much as he was this techie guy,
it wasn't the same.
He didn't age well because his natural instincts is still naturally going to be. When you're a fast person, your natural instinct's still going to be, let me use my pace.
Of course.
Look at Kaká. When he lost his pace, even though he had tech, it wasn't the same player.
Oh, and Kaká, Torres.
Gareth Bale,
there's a reason why Henry played in MLS at 31 years old. It's not because he was just trying to chill in New York. He couldn't cut it at the top level anymore.
It's simple facts. But obviously, from there, the argument, what actually took off everywhere was Henry versus Eto'o. And for me, I'm going to sit here and say what I was seeing on the net about Eto'o was absolutely disrespectful. For the fact that people think it can't even be discussed, for me is crazy. Like, we're talking, in my opinion, the best African player ever.
Definitely, without a doubt. Without a doubt. People will say George Weah, that's before both of our times. I get the Ballon d'Or. But from career start to career end, what they won, what they accomplished, Eto'o for me is the undisputed GOAT of African football. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think he's the best African footballer, and he has everything to match that. Eto'o was a very nice player to watch. Eto'o was a deadly finisher. Eto'o was quick. Eto'o was off the mark. He was an all-round top player. And when I'm seeing people talk about Henry, because of course Henry, the black gloves, the long socks,
he got the clout, let's be real.
Sauce. Of course Henry, we know what it was. He has the clout, he has the streets, as they say. But Eto'o is someone that you cannot disregard. And I know you've got some statistics about some of Eto'o's seasons. One thing I would say, let's go into Eto'o first. We'll go into Eto'o first. Tell me a little bit about some of those seasons I know that you researched.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of tried going best 3 seasons for each. And with Eto'o, I was thinking the one that's going to take me by storm, of course, is going to be his 05-06 season, where I believe he came third in the World... No, 2005, he came third in the World Player of the Year awards. 05-06, he won the Champions League with Barca. But Eto'o has so many slept-on seasons, and I think this... You talked about being from France, the clout as well. I also think that Henry playing in the Premier League, where primarily most people on Twitter are talking, they primarily watch the Premier as well. So they're watching Henry week in, week out, where Eto'o, you see him in the Champions League every once in a while. But Eto'o, I'll read you some of his stats, right? We'll start in 2005-06. 34 goals, 10 assists for a team that won the Champions League.
And that's a team, by the way, that had Ronaldinho, who... everyone was talking about. So Eto'o, again, it goes under the radar because Ronaldinho was at a peak that, other than Messi and Ronaldo, maybe have we seen a guy that good at in a single moment?
It's
probably not. Yeah. So the fact that he's putting up them numbers, but he's not getting their attention. This is probably why he has his chip on his shoulder. Yeah. He's scoring 34 goals in a season. But Ronaldinho's doing and getting all the news. And of course, Ronaldinho was putting out numbers as well. Yeah. But maybe that's where it stems from. You know what I mean?
I agree completely. I mean, even after we'll go into the next season, where we're talking about 2008-09. This is Barcelona's sextuple winning season. They won 6 trophies in 1 year. And Samuel Eto'o scored 36 goals with 8 assists. He almost won the European Golden Boot, only losing it to Diego Forlan, who had an unbelievable season that year as well. But Eto'o, again, 36 goals, 8 assists. All the talk is about Leo Messi, the golden boy. And let's face it, Messi is a better footballer than Eto'o. But Eto'o never gets the justification that a player of that's 36 goals, 8 assists. Bro, if Benzema scores that this season and wins the Champions League and wins the treble, he wins the Ballon d'Or. Eto'o was unlucky that he was playing with Messi at the time and Ronaldinho at the time. So he was always second on his team. But the fact is, Henry in 2006 would have been second to that Ronaldinho team. And Henry in 2008-09 was second or third to Messi in that team. So it's not really Eto'o's fault.
You mentioned the 05-06 season. Yeah. Something significant happened in that season.
For Barcelona?
Something significant happened.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry and Samuel Eto'o met each other in the Champions League final. And only one man turned up.
Yeah, that's
and that was Samuel Eto'o. Yeah. Whether it was a controversial style or not, you know, some people say it was controversial. The whole, the red card situation,
Here's
whatever.
What's not controversial. Henry went one-on-one in that game, I believe, 2 or 3 times.
2 times.
Victor Valdez denied him both of those times. And that's not the takeaway from Henry. I believe that Henry actually dragged Arsenal to that Champions League. He was unbelievable that season. And in fact, I even have the stats for him that year. 33 goals, 10 assists.
Henry, and that was, we're getting to the moments where you started thinking, all right, you started thinking his Arsenal time coming to an end because now he needs that Champions League. But Eto'o turned up in that final. Goal in the final, fantastic goal. It was a fantastic, a bit of exaggeration.
Yeah, it was a typical, for me, it's a typical Eto'o goal.
Exactly.
Right? It's not beautiful, but you put this guy through one-on-one.
He's going to bury.
It's dead.
Yep.
Fate of the universe on the line. Martian's got the death beam pointed at Earth. You got to make it. 1v1. I'm taking Samuel Eto'o. I'm taking Samuel Eto'o. And I'm going to bring another season, 2008-09. We go back to that season. And everyone has this idea in their head that every final Barcelona were in against Man United was just domination from minute 1 to minute 90. Well, 08-09, you go back and rewatch that final, and United had a lot of luck against Barcelona the first opening minutes. They were onto them. And the thing that killed United's momentum and ultimately led to Barca winning that Champions League, Iniesta finds Eto'o on that right-hand side. Eto'o cuts in on Vidic. Very unorthodox move. Eto'o wasn't the most smooth like Henry. That little cut that he always had, and then toe pokes it past Van der Sar. Kills United's momentum. Barcelona cruised the rest of the final. But again, you remember that final? Yes, sir! Eto'o in the big moments, bro, whatever you want to say was always on it. And big games aren't just finals. We know that. And Henry in finals wasn't great, but in big games, you can't question him. Eto'o, every single time his team needed him, chips on the line, you could always count on him.
I mean, the thing is, like, we've got their career stats, and of course, we're not even here to talk about only stats and stuff, because when we got into Henry, you know, he's more than just stats as 100%. Well.
And plus, me and you, bro, we're not statisticians here. Eye test, X-retina.
We got their career stats, and it's Henry, 793 games, 360 goals, 177 assists.
Per transfer market as well.
Yes. And Samuel Eto'o, 724 games, 362 goals, but 117 assists. Yeah. So just through those stats, you can see that Henry was more of an all-round player
than
a Samuel Eto'o. Henry was still kind of like more of a pass-first kind of guy. You know what I mean? He's one of them, you know, like LeBron, like, hey, I got all these numbers, but I'm a person, and they call me a pass-first guy? You know what I mean? He was like that. Like, Henry was very selfless. And
you even said he gave up penalties.
He gave up penalties. So there's a French superstition, for anyone that doesn't know. There's a French superstition that if you get fouled for the penalty, you don't take it, you pass it on. So there was a few penalties in his career that Robert Pires took. So if anyone's looking back at the old Arsenal and think, why is Pires taking the penalty and Henry's on the pitch? That's because Henry won the foul. So I've never seen anyone else follow that. It says from him, but apparently it's a French superstition.
That's kind of cool too, I can't lie. I don't need penalties to win Golden Boots. I can do without it.
Bro, it's unbelievable. But we will get into, you touched on it a little bit in the final thing. Yeah. But let's talk about Thierry Henry.
Yeah.
This guy is something that I see. So I saw something, and you know, everyone always talks about the peak of this person. The peak. Yeah. Oh, go to that Diego Milito peak season. Go to Forlan peak season. Sheva.
Yeah.
Thierry Henry is more than a peak.
100%.
Thierry Henry is a prime.
Yeah.
It's a prime. And his prime is something for me that, for a striker, we've never seen before, other than potentially R9.
I would even say R9.
Was R9 stop injuries and all this type of stuff got in the way. 100%. So Henry's peak, that 5-6 year stretch, is unbelievable, bro. And he did everything in that period in terms of the way he played, the way he controlled his team. I've never seen a striker who's had so much involvement in controlling the tempo of a game. You know how crazy that is?
That's true.
You're a striker. Why is the tempo running through you sometimes?
Everything runs through him.
It was ridiculous. Of course, he'll pull off to the left. And I spoke to Rio Ferdinand, and one of his things was...
Rio Jackson, actually. I thought you were talking...
Hey, some people might not know.
Clarification.
Some people might not know. So I spoke to Rio Ferdinand, and I talked about, you know, like, why is it that, you know, when you talk to defenders, or when you see defenders talk about the hardest striker I played against, they've not often mentioned Thierry Henry. And I asked him that. Why is that? Only John Terry has mentioned it, like Henry was ridiculous.
No, it's true, because people say Drogba, they say Aguero even.
Suarez. Because them men are always in your face. Yeah. He said, I didn't even really used to play against Henry.
Because he drifts so much to the left.
Henry would be down there, then he'll pop up here, then I didn't really ever play against Henry.
You're not you're not 1v1 against him a lot.
He was elusive, and for a guy that big to be elusive, Henry is 6'1", 6'2", and he's that elusive on the pitch. It's a mad skill and it's a mad art. And I'm talking about a prime.
Yeah.
I want to say this, not statistic, but whatever. 5 years in a row, Henry was in the World Team of the Year. 5 years in a row. So they started doing the World Team of the Year, I believe, from 2001.
Yeah.
Henry made that World Team of the Year from 2001 to 2006, every single year.
So basically, he was the undisputed best striker on the planet for 5 years in a row.
Undisputed best striker in it. Like, you know, when people try and talk about, you know, how do you quantify who's the best? No, you don't. World Team of the Year, sometimes they go on reputation or whatever. But every single season, there's a reason you can back up why he's there.
Yeah.
I think the reason why, again, this debate seems very like, you can't mention Eto'o, Henry, is because, as I just mentioned, Henry at one point was standing alone.
Yeah.
Eto'o is 4 years younger than Henry. People will remember.
That's true.
So he didn't really cross Henry's path then. When Eto'o started getting going, Henry was on the slide now. And I genuinely see it as like, listen, my time's done now.
Pass the baton.
Here you go. And Eto'o said, I'm going to take that. Because for me, there was a period where I think Eto'o was the best striker in the world.
I would agree.
I think he was the best striker. From around 2008 times, I think he was the best striker in the world.
But here's the thing with Eto'o, right? And you talk about that chip on his shoulder. People will disagree with what you have to say because they're going to say Fernando Torres at one point was the better striker, Ibra was the better striker, or who else was really like a top dog at that moment?
Was he?
Drogba.
Were they? No, they weren't.
But we're talking about players that, for me, Torres was in the Premier League doing it. Drogba was in the Premier League doing it. Rooney was in the Premier League doing it.
I just got to say, we are very lucky, but if Eto'o in his prime played for United,
or Chelsea,
Arsenal, or Chelsea, oh my
brother, you give him week by week, like he's on mainstream television, brother.
Oh my goodness. I mean, because you look at how Didier Drogba's spoken about. Drogba set his own legacy by being the ultimate final killer. But sometimes I feel like Drogba's spoken about over Samuel Eto'o.
No, that conversation has had a lot. But for me, there's no debate between the two of them. No, and I love Drogba, right?
Is
but Eto'o had a better career than Didier Drogba did, but you wouldn't know it talking to your everyday fan who watches the Premier League because they were seeing Drogba in your face in finals, like you said. But Eto'o, bro, you look goals scored compared to Drogba, it's not even a question.
The thing is, the reason why Henry as well, you know, like Henry had a moment where, as I mentioned, those 5 years in a row, I don't only think that Henry was the best striker in the world. I think the reason why I have Henry above Eto'o, however, I do think it's a very good discussion. Is because Henry was not just the best striker in the world. In my opinion, you could call him the best player in the world, potentially.
I would agree,
Now, does that mean he was outright the best player in the world? It's debatable how you quantify these things. Because for me, he was never better than a Zidane.
No.
And you saw that internationally. You saw who listen, I'm the big dog here. You
know, it's true.
Play your position.
It's true. You're absolutely right.
However, I'm talking about consistency of performances. Thierry Henry at a point was the best striker in the world, or best player in the world. Ronaldinho came, he had his peak, he had his moments, but while Ronaldinho was still doing that, Henry was still an unbelievable player. So I feel like that's what Henry has. Of course, he has the invincible. He has the 23 goals, 24 goals, 20 assists season. Unbelievable.
That season in general, right? 2002-03, 32 goals in all comps, 28 assists.
Internationally, I don't think there's a comparison between Eto'o and Thierry Henry. And I know people are going to say, sorry, bro. And I know people are going to say, well, Eto'o played for, in a worse competition, AFCON. But there was a significant period where that guy was the king of Africa. Henry has never been the king of Europe. He hasn't. And you watch France, you know who the father was of that team. And it was Zidane. I can sit here and talk about Zidane for an hour.
Of course.
But it was Zidane. And Henry has one of those records where, yes, he's the top goal scorer of France. Mbappe will break that. But he's the top
Giroud might break it, let's be real.
He was the top goal scorer of France of all time, 51 goals. However, yes, in the World Cup, he scored a few. He was their top goal scorer in the World Cup and when they won it. That was all in the group stage, I believe. Henry was never really that guy for France. The Henry that we know for Arsenal was never that guy for France. Samuel Eto'o that we knew for Barcelona was that guy for Cameroon. Samuel Eto'o, even from when he was at Mallorca, he was scoring goals, by the way.
I was going to say,
he was that guy for Cameroon.
He won the Copa del Rey for Mallorca. Like he was unbelievable at Mallorca. That's why he went to Barca for 24 million. And you look at what Eto'o did for Cameroon, winning them the Olympics, which is a massive deal. Maybe not so much in today's game, but for these players, it's a massive thing. Going to the Confederations Cup final with Cameroon. Bear in mind, this is a tournament dominated mostly by South America and Europe.
And by the way, when they won the Olympics, that was 2000. They won the AFCON in 2000. Then they done a back-to-back in 2002.
That's crazy.
Eto'o is a certified football legend. I think people know that. I'm not going to disrespect people and say they don't know that. I think Eto'o also gets a bit of a rub out because it was... he became a journeyman after a while. Everton, Chelsea.
That's really the thing, right?
And that's when a lot of Prem fans and stuff started awakening and seeing what he's doing. And it's like, listen, his time was done. 100%. Henry was in
He was in New York balling.
It's like, with Michael Jordan.
Forget the Wizards.
We saw the Wizards. We saw
it, but we didn't really see it. We just
This is the thing. So if people are going to give Henry that grace, you got to give Eto'o that grace. The last couple of years, okay, he was maybe chasing the money and blah, blah, blah. However, I still remember that hat-trick he scored against United.
The little... I got one more in me.
Listen, celebration is the guy is a certified
There's one
legend.
more thing I want to talk about with Eto'o, and this is the third season that I wrote down for him. And this is when he went to Inter. And here's another thing, you talk about the chip on his shoulder. Eto'o, when Pep Guardiola, this is a story for you guys. Pep Guardiola, when he first came to Barca, his very first press conference, said, I'm going to build a team and there's 3 guys that won't be a part of it. Ronaldinho, Deco, and Eto'o. His first press conference, he said, those 3 are not in my plans.
The 3 biggest probably personalities.
Absolutely. Ronaldinho, within a week, was gone to Milan. Deco went to Chelsea. Eto'o said, I'm staying firm. And in fact, Pep benched him in preseason, and players from the team, Xavi, Puyol, big leaders, came to the dressing room and said, Pep, this guy has to stay. We need him to win trophies this year. Eto'o ended up changing Pep's mind, stayed, scored those 36 goals, won the sextuple. The next year, Pep gave him to Inter along with 40 million pounds in cash for Zlatan.
Basically, was it 40 or was it 60?
40. Altogether, they valued it at around 60. But he basically said, we want Zlatan this much, you can have Eto'o plus 40 million. and Eto'o comes to Inter, plays on the wing because he's that hungry to win, allows Milito to be the main guy, wins this treble. The biggest story, though, of Eto'o at Inter is the next season.
Back-to-back trebles.
Right, that's another thing. I'm pretty sure no one has ever done that.
Back-to-back trebles.
Eto'o, the next year, Mourinho was gone. Milito was actually injured a lot that season. Eto'o takes the reins up front, and he has his best goal-scoring season ever. 37 goals, 17 assists, playing for Inter up front.
And who was the manager?
The first manager was Rafa Benitez, gets fired in December, and then Leonardo, who's like a sporting director, that's what people know him for, was the manager, and Eto'o was doing bits. Bro, this guy is one of the greatest goal scorers of the modern era.
He's one of the greatest strikers, and for me, in my opinion, he's probably in the top 5 strikers that I've seen ever. In my time with R9s, with Henry's, Luis Suarez's. I've got Eto'o in amongst that as well. You know, maybe he's not as fashionable as some other names, and this is why he has his chip on his shoulder, but he turns up in finals. He turns up when it's needed. He's got 3 Champions Leagues. Is it 3?
3.
To his name. 3 Champions Leagues to his name. He's scored in multiple finals. This is a legend. But as we know, Thierry Henry is a great as well. So I'm just going to ask you to sum it all up. Henry or Eto'o?
I'm going to take Thierry Henry, despite everything that I just said.
No, it's not despite. You're bringing him up.
I mean, we're talking about 2 legends of the game. I'm going to take Thierry Henry, and that's because Eto'o, for me, is the better goal scorer, but Thierry Henry is the better footballer overall. And I just think when you talk about you can't quantify certain players with statistics, Henry had the statistics, but then from an eye test point of view, from a love of the game point of view, this guy dominated games. Like you said, he controls the tempo.
Sometimes it felt like he transcended football as well.
I absolutely agree with
his
that.
His impact, his influence.
While I would say Eto'o, in terms of goal scoring, in terms of being a number 9, can chat to him, in terms of being an overall footballer, I think Henry, like, there's 3 strikers in my opinion, and you might think that the third one doesn't even have to eat at this table. I would put R9, Henry, and Suarez for me at a table of strikers that just transcended scoring goals. These guys could win you football games without scoring goals whatsoever.
It's just not only it's just the magic they could produce.
Absolutely,
it's just the magic they could produce. They can the way they could just flip games on his head was just something. I'm fully agree with everything, so I don't even need to repeat it. Yeah. I agree with you. I would say Thierry Henry. I just hate the disrespect that they've given. And one thing I don't like is Eto'o. Come on, like, listen, you're a football legend, and listen, as a black guy as well, I want to see 2 black football legends held up together. You were teammates. We don't need no rivalry. We don't need no disses. We don't need none of that. Let's squash all of that. Appreciate 2 black football legends, man.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I still want to see Henry on CBS. Clap back. I can't lie. I'm dying to see that, bro.
Henry's not. Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna shout Micah, see if he. I'm gonna send him that.
You gotta throw a little like bait in there.
I'm gonna send him that and say, yo, ask my man what he thinks of that.
One thing I want to say before we finish it up. While I don't agree with Eto'o, I understand him, and like I don't blame him for saying it, or at least thinking it. He has every right to believe that he was at that level, because he definitely was.
He was.
It's just, if you ask me, I would disagree, but I don't blame him for thinking it.
Yeah, I mean, what a player that he was, and what a show that this has been. Guys, make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. If you like this type of content, if you like us debating who's better than who, you know, we react off what you guys discuss.
Max
we react
Kellerman,
off what
Stephen
we see, we react off what we see on the timeline, etc. So keep throwing these things at us. Drop in the comments. Make sure, maybe if you want us to debate 2 other players, you know, the whole Lampard-Gerrard debate, you know, all these type of players, make sure you send that in, man. I enjoyed this one. Liaz, for me and my first guest as well on
honor.
FC.
Thank you.
Guys, as I said, like, share, and subscribe. That was another episode, and we are out.